A new disturbing footage apparently showing injured Russian soldiers being executed by Ukrainians has emerged online. We can't show you the video in full because of its violent content, but the footage shows multiple soldiers lying in the road in a pool of blood. One of them appears to be alive, but then is shot and killed. At least one dead soldier has his hands tied behind his back and appears to have been shot in the head. Separately, we heard from Russian soldiers who had been held as prisoners of war in Ukraine, and they told us about their ordeal in captivity.
They beat me constantly without even asking questions. It was just non-stop screaming, a lack of food. People were being beaten. They didn't even scream, they howled. It just doesn't sound human. I've heard a man's ribs break, his arms break. A civilian was watching Russian news on his phone. He was taken there. A 71-year-old man with diabetes. He was lying there, his hands bandaged. There were women there also.
They tied hands and feet and were beating them. I had a beard, and their attitudes towards Chechens is bad. They were kicking us in the face, on the head, on the ribs, threatened to hang and castrate us. They filmed us during the beatings.
They put us against the wall, and many Ukrainian soldiers were deciding what to do with us. Someone offered to shoot at the legs, someone just to kill. We were kept in the gym. It was very cold. They constantly mocked the pilots, beat them, forced them not to sleep. They were saying the pilots could return to Russia only as disabled people.
We were lying in the gym blindfolded and heard how they beat one soldier all night, and in the morning they said, "Do you even know that you slept next to a corpse? I think he was beaten with sticks."
Meanwhile, battles continue in the port city of Mariupol. President Zelensky, speaking with Ukrainian media, stressed the urgent need for a solution. The Russian Defense Ministry released a statement saying Ukrainian troops have a chance to lay down their arms and have a 3-hour window on Tuesday in which they can safely take an evacuation path. We spoke with Mariupol locals who claim to have suffered at the hands of the neo-Nazi Azov battalion. Our correspondent Murad Gazdiev reports from the ground.
Here in East Mariupol, relative calm prevails. Children with grimy faces play ball with their puppy as explosions sound in the distance. For weeks they had been trapped in basements as battles raged above them. We also met Svetlana, a local pensioner, who described what happened here.
They dug in on the 7th floor there. They broke into the apartment and kicked people out. And they're on the 6th floor.
Who was it?
The Ukrainian army, Azov or the army, I'm not sure. They broke into this block also and stayed on the 2nd floor there.
Svetlana fears showing her face. Her son and sister are in an area of Mariupol still held by Ukrainian Azov nationalists. She fears reprisal against them. Svetlana knows well what the nationalists are capable of.
When it began, I tried to get through to see relatives 3 times, and they wouldn't let me. I begged them on my knees.
Azov?
Azov wouldn't let us out.
What did they say to you?
I'm sorry, but can I tell you exactly what they said? Go f*** yourself. Get out of here before we shoot you.
To your face?
Yes, and the second time they stopped me, asked me who I was. I told them I was just a local, one of theirs. So they said, "Get out of here, you're not one of us."
Civilians, by all appearances, were human shields to them. They have always considered Mariupol pro-Russian and therefore subhuman, part of their neo-Nazi ideology. Azov militants turned apartment buildings with hundreds of civilians into machine gun and rocket nests, into bases. In every single building that we've visited in Mariupol, it's the same thing, broken into apartments. I want to show you this particular flat where Azov fighters made their home. The place is a mess. It has already been visited by security services who found all sorts of electronics, cameras, as well as drugs in the trash bin. But everywhere here are bottles of vodka. Bottles of vodka, pills, illicit drugs that were again found here. The fighters that were dislocated here, that lived here, apart from leaving the place a mess, also left their uniforms behind, which indicates that they too, like many other Azov and Ukrainian troops, that they made their exit disguised as civilians. Whiskey. One can only wonder where they found so much alcohol. Here, by the way, is one of their military pins. Svetlana is still distraught. The violence and mistreatment may be over, but the memories burn.
You have no idea about what we went through. You can't imagine. We had to brave bullets and shells just to get water for the children. Last time I took shower was on the 23rd of February. Do you understand? Imagine watching an apartment burn and hearing a woman next to you cry that her mother is in there. A 90-year-old woman burned alive. We found just her skull. We heard her screaming amid the flames and the fires, and we couldn't do anything. I can still hear that scream. Imagine burying people in the kindergarten because he can't go any further and risk getting shot. The man who dug the graves had to jump in when the shells landed nearby. What do you think it's like looking at people who are terrified for their families?
There were no words. There's nothing you can respond with. Outside, graves dot former playgrounds and kindergartens, where a month ago children played and laughed. This may seem like an ordinary yard surrounded by high-rise apartment buildings, but in the middle is this graveyard. People for weeks had been trapped in their basements. Any who attempted to flee were shot dead by Azov snipers, Ukrainian nationalists who forbid any sort of evacuation. People cradled the bodies of their loved ones, the corpses of their loved ones, for days before finally deciding to bury them here. Here's a very small grave, that of a child. The battle for Mariupol has galvanized the Russian public's support for this special operation, now that the horrors and depravity of Ukrainian nationalists have been laid bare. Galvanized and horrified in equal measure. Morad Gazdiev, RT, from